Happy Monday, everyone. We're back. Monday Night Live, 6 p.m. Simon and I, the Morecambe and Wise of golf, as we were labelled last week.
Chuckle Brothers, I reckon, is probably a bit more appropriate. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, what a weekend that was.
Great.
The Open.
Great stuff.
Isn't it? I mean,
Doesn't get better than the Open.
It's on all week long.
Yeah.
From Monday, the coverage. I mean, the old BBC Sport days of being on Thursday morning from 6:30 a.m. Of course, Sky Sports does that now as well. But to have it on Monday, to get the insights of practice rounds, and then on the range, with Di and so many of the golfers that we know, what a great insight.
Yeah, I mean the coverage is fabulous. I think our coverage we get here better than they get in the States from some of the feedback that I was seeing online. But I think there's so many aspects of it. I think particularly links golf in particular, the different ways of playing shots, how players see things, how they like to feel shots, and there's so much to talk about, and so hence they can do a whole week of coverage.
So on today's show, we're going to be talking about some of the shots that the winner used to great effect, taking down the field by 6 shots.
Yeah.
We're going to be hitting some shots, so do stay with us. We've got the live chat up in front of us, so fire across any questions. If those of you watching us on Instagram, Matty is our alt golfer, is standing by to answer those for us and throw them our way. And as per usual, James is spinning the discs. So, as I say, do fire across any questions. What were the highlights for you?
Well, the highlight for me, one of the best bits of the whole week was after everything had finished, Harman had got the trophy and they went back to the open zone and the storm was kicking in, and you got Holmesy, David Howell and Jake in the open zone with no protection, a couple of umbrellas, and then Howler thinning a persimmon wood into the face of the revetted bunker. In fact, that was brilliant.
I didn't see that.
But it was worth catching it though. There'll be a clip on Sky Sports for sure. It's so funny. But in all honesty, I think highlights. It was interesting. I think the last day, because of the weather, there wasn't a standout. I mean, Rahm Saturday, that was just incredible to watch. Rahm just going for it, bullhorns are going wallop. Yeah, I'm having it this round. I think seeing the bit that I can take away from this is that you're seeing a guy who is not a bomber, not a big name, not a big personality, but playing a kind of golf that everyone can relate to, and winning, in my opinion, the biggest tournament out there because he just played the course right.
My question would be, it's not the Open Championship's not been synonymous from being a big golf course. I don't think the rough was particularly penal. No. It was fairly friendly, but that would have favoured the bombers more so, wouldn't it? I think that the Open Championship has had a bit of a history of, I suppose, like the US Open has had a bit of an outlier feel to it. But that being said, they're 2 of the 4 biggest golf tournaments in the world. I think we're kind of coming full circle, with Bryson sort of backtracking, bringing his game back to, shall we say, normality. It does feel that the game has started to play on fairways do count again. Hitting greens do count again. Having a good short game does count again, rather than this. Feel like we've gone through this phase of stand on the tee, bulk up, swing fast, launch it out there. I think there is a place for it, and obviously the guys, Rory here, astronomical distances, but I think the line share, an Open Championship like this really inspires a lot of golfers that actually, do you know what, I don't need to be that 300-yard bomb. Yeah,
I think you're right. The rough wasn't that penal. There were a couple of patches that were, but I think what we saw, a bit of tech help.
Oh, hang on.
What's up? Has he pulled his mic out? Possibly. Yeah. But I think what it showed is that the guys that were just standing there smashing drivers, bunkers are a hazard on a links course. And if you're not in the fairway, you're not in control of your golf ball. If you're not in control of your golf ball, you can't control flight, distance. With links golf, it's all about where do you land it to facilitate. You have to use the ground. Something Tiger's always said. And for me, this was he schooled them in links golf last week. Sorry, and there was no luck involved. He pretty much led wire to wire. He was 1 off after Thursday, and he then just went away. And I think this whole, I get the stats side of things of get close to the green, but actually, short grass. Short grass and a short game count. And that short game stat, which I'm sure you were going to come on to as well, but the putting stat, I think it was 98%, 58 out of 59 putts from 10 foot or less.
Astronomical.
Yeah.
I mean, just get yourself at home, get yourself a 10-footer out, and see if you can hole on your carpet with a dead straight putt. See if you can hole 60 in a row. If you get past 10, you've done well.
Yeah.
From 10 feet, that is. You know, and I know it could have had 15 at 10 feet, but 15 at 8 feet. We'll try 15 at 10, 15 at 8 feet, and see how many you get in, because that is unbelievable. And the thing that got me was Saturday when John Rahm went out, shot 63, 64?
63.
63 was right.
63? 8. Yeah, 63.
Yeah, 63.
Yeah.
What was so surprising to me is that because of the round that he shot and so early in the day, and that sort of played in his hands, I was expecting the field to sort of catch him up, push on, and make him sort of 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th maybe.
Yeah.
I never saw him being a contender for being he wasn't obviously, in the last group on Sunday. Yeah. I was really surprised by that, but it just goes to show there were so many guys on the cusp of making the cut that then went out and shot some decent numbers on Saturday that put themselves back in. You know, Rory did that. You know, Scotty Scheffler didn't, which was a surprise. But Cam Smith kind of put himself back in there. There's a lot of Jason Day did the same. You know, a lot of guys that really caught up the field from being just making the cut, and it was really nice to see a cut and second place be so close to each other. Yeah,
and I think going back to the putting stat, I had a thought in mind. What was the point? So I mean, one, Scheffler's putting. You look at his stats versus Brian Harman. You know, 149th I think he was versus Harman. Yeah, there's no way he can't be first with those stats. But you look at Sunday and how few other players were holding putts. That either tells you that they're trying to force it or how good he was.
Yeah,
and maybe a bit of both. And I thought it was because they weren't coming at him. It wasn't that edge of your seat stuff. But I just hope he gets the credit he deserves for he won. He beat everyone by 6. This wasn't just a lucky win. He was there the whole time through, and he kind of gutsed it out, and he deserves all the plaudits. It was incredible.
Well, I had a little bet on Shane Lowry that I tipped up last week. He missed the cut, so then I went again on Cam Young, and he really pooped himself on Sunday. So I was really pleased about that.
Yeah, it wasn't a good Sunday, was it?
No, it wasn't. After he hit that iron shot into the bunker on 5 or 6 or whatever it was was like, oh no! If anything that could go wrong seemed to be going wrong for him. Well, look, we've got some club heads that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, we're allowed to talk about some bits of them.
Right.
So we can talk about performance, but I can't talk any tech on them until the 3rd of August.
And they can't see them either?
Can see them, we can show you the heads. But there is a global embargo on the technology within them until the 3rd of August. But
we can do a
comparison with...
We can hit them as well?
we can hit them. I can do a comparison with... I'm going to do a comparison the T150 to the 100S and the 200 to 200. So we can get a comparison on what the differences are, but not maybe why there are the differences. But we can say this is what Titleist.
Oh, nobody cares about why. We just want more distance and better performance. Who cares
so
we
got those to have a little bit of a hit with.
Brilliant. So
anything else?
So stay tuned for that. That's coming up a little bit later. Let's get here some shots into some holes, shall we? Do a bit of pitching, talk about some wedges, and maybe talk about a little. I think that
was one of the takeaways from certainly Saturday, Sunday, and watching as I saw a decent bit of the coverage was how good. I think it's hard to appreciate how good these players are. Male, female, tour pros from kind of short distance. How accurate they are.
And so what you want to do is show how bad we are.
Yeah.
Got it. Lovely. Okay. Well,
and also
whether
there's anything technique-wise that people can
take away
from it.
Well, so we've got obviously
what distance do you want to?
Well, let's start off with the classic 100 yards, shall we? I mean, everyone has at some point faced 100 yard.
Let's go. 100 yard, 103. There we go. Oh.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So we've got 103. We've got no wind going on here.
3. I can change the wind. We can take the wind out. Let's take the wind out. There we go.
Wonderful. Just as easy as that. Well, Golf Addicts is here. Ant Lockyer, he's tuned in. Interested to hear the thoughts about Rory's wedge and short iron failings of yesterday.
Well, it's a bit more than yesterday, isn't it? Let's be fair.
Yeah.
Compared to the rest of his game, I think.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I watched Rory over the last round, it became more and more draw bias, didn't it?
Yeah.
It became more and more loopy left. He started the gesturing of trying to hold it off more and more. It was still going more and more left. I think the minute you've got that going on, you're now affecting spin rate. Loft of the golf club's coming down. Ball's going to start going through the wind a little bit quicker. Not that they had that much more wind, but it immediately really impacts distance control. So I think for me, it looked like the swing got more and more across the line. He got more and more from the inside, more and more swinging of the head. But that's Rory of juniors.
Yeah.
You know, when he first
Because the
came
bit
out
that we
on tour,
see, maybe you can explain why this, because the bit that I notice is that finish starts to go that way.
Yeah.
He has that when he gets to the wedge away and comes, it's up and there.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I mean, it's an interesting. You know, Rory, for me, he looks like he's got a strong hold, but it's very much across the palm of his hand. So it looks like it's a strong hold, but again, this is only my view and opinion. It's a weak placement on the golf club, and when you look at his club face at the top, he's got a bit of toe hang, you have toes pointing to the floor. This sort of look about the swing, the toes pointing down. He's always had this dragged move into the golf swing where he pulls it in, this right shoulder, this right arm rides up. And as soon as that right arm rides up and gets stuck, and now all of a sudden he's having to unload it and tow it down.
yeah,
Now the more the wind comes at you, the more he's trying to push the ball into the floor, the more that club and arms is out of sequence. And so, but because he's got a grip that is going to help him rotate the face, it becomes more loopy draw. And so I think, you know, in reference to Ant's question about his iron failings, I believe it's just an extension of the way he's always played the game. And I think he spent too long trying to fight that and not really maybe embrace it. He's tried to work on getting a stronger face. He's tried to, working with Pete, setting it earlier and all of this nonsense. I think if he just played with what he's got a little bit and more trimmed it up with the ball flights and not tried to go down the route of a Jason Day looking golf swing or something a bit more orthodox. I think that's where he's fallen short, Rory. And then you add a little bit of scar tissue on top of that with hiccups where he hasn't got over the line. You know, when we've had the Open in Ireland, it got off to such a bad start. It's all the hallmarks of someone that is quite frail with his game, but incredible when he's on. But when he's
first
not
5
on,
holes.
but when he's not on, it feels like he could hit it like both ways, like in a heartbeat. And so, look, I'm cutting arguably one of the best players in the world right now, but when you see him in the heat of battle every single week, not delivering, when he's out front and he's playing against people that aren't, and it's not a major, and he's fine. He's on autopilot.
I think it's a stat, isn't it? Those leading after 54 holes, this Tiger wins like 93% of the time. Rory second on 50-something%, and I think third place is like Rahm something like 23%.
Yeah.
So that shows when he's leading, he's
better.
very, very hard to catch.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when he gets out of his own way and plays his game, fine. I think when he starts to press, I don't think he's that great at that. Whereas Tiger was pretty special at that. But look, the golf swing's a magical mystery tour, and many golfers are doing many different things. You'd have thought by now that there is some reliability in all of the sports science and all of the tech we've got that you could say, just do that and that'll work.
Yeah.
It just isn't, is there? And when someone stands on the range and just rips it down there like a Rory would do, and then when it comes to Sunday and he can't find a fairway and he can't find a green, it's difficult to really pinpoint. So 100 yards.
So
what club you got?
So what I've done is I could play like a full, that's a pretty much full sandwich. 105 is full sandwich for me. But I'm not going to do that because that's not a wedge swing. I'm going to go up to my 50. I'm going to play a 3/4 one because that's more the kind of shots we're talking about here. So this is, I'm not going to lie, it's never been my forte. So
Good
I've
to
always
try
been
out
better
there.
on full power.
Right.
But it's trying to play. So it's always 100's always been a relatively comfortable one, and I go to my 50, I can go to a little kind of 9 o'clock swing, and then hopefully put it hopefully put it somewhere near. So
Evening, David. Nice to have you along.
I guess you're always looking tempo on these, aren't you? It's about kind of not getting tight and not putting too much speed in, and just control it.
I think the wedge game is oh, that looks tasty. Oh, nice opener.
See, I should talk
Who
myself down
you?
more often.
Who
Shouldn't
invited you? But I think there's been lots of theories, haven't there, about how to be good at Peltz and his clock face
the
and all that kind of
stuff. Yeah.
I don't. There is no other way to get better at good wedge play is bag of balls, grass to a flag. Yeah, I don't think there is any shortcut to it because there are too many variables. I think having TrackMan and your quad giving you
it's a confidence
super
thing to know
numbers.
that that swing should go that yardage. But we all know we've all done the one of those and stuck it in the turf. It's building your trust that you've got a club for a certain job, isn't it?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. Can we get the TrackMan numbers up on here?
You click on one of the tiles.
Okay, so let's see where you. I didn't get the angle of attack on that last one. Let's
Move it back a little bit as well.
Because angle of attack is a biggie because it once you start to trap it and dig at it a little bit more, that's when you start to change the dynamic loft on the golf club.
Okay.
And obviously affect the spin rate. So angle of attack with wedge play. Yeah, back in the day when you used to, everyone was out there trying to take a dirty, great big divot.
A little longer.
You can of course make a divot without a big attack angle. 7 degrees down is quite a lot. But like we talked about last week, you can make the ball come out with less dynamic loft, but only have an attack angle of 3 degrees down, just by how you change the loft
So what
angles.
would you be looking for angle attack wise? Do you have a number that you would want to see?
Yeah, I think if you're playing a stock shot, I would like to see 4.5, 5 degrees of down. I wouldn't really want to see
even
too
on a
much.
wedge, because I'd normally see it on a 6-iron.
Yeah, for me, well, that's mainly
keep it
because
constant.
most people still play their wedges in the middle of their stance and back.
Right. Yeah.
For me, I don't think you should be playing any ball centre or back, because name me one sport where you play to a ball dynamically that's in the middle of your sternum. You wouldn't kick a football. Hockey is the only one. If you're trying to put energy into something, playing it out in front of you gives you that opportunity to swing the lever. So ball back in stance to me is all of a sudden creating really quite a steep angle of attack. Then you're meeting it with lots of shaft lean, which is way more different to what you would do with everything else.
So
and I think that's where you start to get those knees going and
so send you
terrific contacts.
forward and try and shallow it out a little bit.
Yeah, let the lever swing a little bit more.
Okay, let's see if I can shallow this out a little. So I tried to keep the flight down a little because I don't want it to come back at me. But it'd be interesting to see, little pull, but interesting to see where the angle of attack changes to. None at all.
Interesting. It actually went worse.
Yeah.
So the ball went further forwards to you. You then
Well, I probably
drove the handle at it, as opposed to feeling down at the bottom, starting to feel the radius expand more. Now, you start to make the radius expand more, you have an opportunity to reduce spin. And if you were to then go down more with loft, i.e. go down to your 46 wedge or whatever it might be, you could then have very much a collected divot
Yeah.
rather than dug at, and it would still feel like it's going through the wind because angle of attack's less, spin rate's less.
Okay, let's see if I can not drive at it. So I'll let that flight up a little bit more. And so definitely a quieter flight to come out with a little less speed.
Still at 6 down.
Still at 6.
Let the pro in. Let the pro in.
Just so, can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Well, no,
you can do. It's
think
just getting a feel for it, isn't it?
I just think it's how you feel your wedge play, right?
Yeah.
Crikey, we've got some questions that have come in through there. So I'm talking about feeling how the radius can start to expand here. But of course, that will add more dynamic loft to the golf club. So feeling like you collect it more. Obviously, the loft of the shot's gone up. So 3.4 down.
Yeah.
But you can equally create less dynamic loft and then feel like you can sweep it off the top. So I create less dynamic loft, sweep it off the top, ball goes further. What was the angle of attack on that one? So still 3.8. So I changed the angle of attack, kept the angle of attack the same, took some loft off of it and felt like I collected it. So like we talked about when we were playing those shots into the wind ahead of the Open, there's different ways of feeling it. Old school has always been ball back in stance, playing your wedge shot to make the ball flight come down, which is a little bit of the way you have played it.
Yeah.
There's that much lower, look at the angle of attack on that one. That one's going to be brutally down. 7.3. So
Looks all right to me.
so that to me felt like there was no energy going in that direction. It felt like all the energy
Driving
was
onto
going
it.
down in that direction, and it felt like I was getting that sensation of lots of levers and lots of energy going into the turf.
Just going to make sure we haven't missed any questions. Let me scroll back
What have
up.
you got?
There we go. So Paul Clanno, appreciate the vids, great information. My question, what are the key gap ratios between pitch wedge and the wedges and how many wedges are optimal? It depends how far your pitch wedge goes on that one. So if your pitch wedge goes 100 yards, you actually probably only need 2 wedges below that. If your pitch wedge goes 140 yards, then 3 is probably, there's no, like Tiger plays pitch wedge 56, 60. Mickelson played pitch wedge and about 4 wedges. So there's no absolute right or wrong with the wedges. I think you get someone like a Lowry uses 1 club for everything, and then you get, say, Tiger chips and pitches with everything. For the majority of golfers, you kind of want 15 to 20 yards is a nice ratio, because then you're not having to overwork the shots. So for a lot of golfers, adjusting and feeling and trying to play different distances and 3/4 shots, just don't practice enough and aren't that good at them. So a bit more armoury is often a good way to be. For high level golfers, say someone like Lowry or Tiger are used to playing an awful lot of shots, so they've dialed it in and they've just got used to using a club for everything. So there's no hard and fast rule, but in the main, more than 20, certainly 25 yards, and you're asking yourself to do an awful lot of manipulation with shots, which I would always advise, if you're gonna have an extra club anyway, have it at the bottom end, rather than putting 4-iron, 5-iron, 3-iron, 4-iron, 5-iron in, where you're hitting to an area. You're trying to be accurate with wedges, so give yourself the armoury to be that way.
I think for the line share, isn't it? It's pitching wedge, gap wedge, lob wedge. Those are the 3 wedges, and there might be one in there, again, depending on club speed, really. I mean, if you're pushing driver out there at 100 miles an hour or more of club head speed, then you're probably good for 4 wedges, aren't you?
Creating enough room.
Yeah.
I mean, the other bit is also depending on where you're playing and kind of bounce conditions. And so here we have more variabilities, season to season. So this time of year you've got firm turf, soft sand. If you've got sand in the bunkers, if you're fortunate enough to play a course of sand, and winter you've got soft turf, firm sand. So having a variation in bounce, that's the other reason for having maybe an extra wedge.
Yeah. So Andy, welcome along. Nice to have you here. Dave Hurley, I use the clock system, 9 o'clock swing, 1030 full swing, all my wedges, gives me confidence to trust the swing. My only question with that is that if you said to someone, do a 9 o'clock swing or a 9:30 swing, it wouldn't really be 9 o'clock. Because to do, but I think the good thing is that if that's what you feel, that's great.
Because that's a very, with Dave, it's a variation on the kind of the 7:30, the Pelt 7:30, 9, 10, 7:30. I could never do. It's too short a swing. I always felt like the ball was, I wanted to see the ball airborne and it came out like a shot duck. But now I used, certainly when I was playing that sort of structure, I didn't really use the 10:30. I used the 9. That kind of what feels like by 9 o'clock. It means
Oh, nice trousers, by the way.
Thank you very much. Socks match as well. So they'd be disappointed if they didn't. So I think having a structure that gives you the trust to play a yardage in a club, that's worth a lot.
Agree.
I've got a question. Does it change with daylight saving?
His dress sense.
No, the clock face.
Deary me. Boo.
Kevin Phillips, let's move on. Oh, lovely to have you here, Andy, even if you were a bit late. Kevin Phillips said, I really enjoyed the fitting with Matt. If you haven't seen it, it's our beast of a driver. Matt Hyatt, one of our fittings. Simon fitted Matt for a driver. At what point in a fitting does TX Flex come up, or tipping, or does a different profile achieve that?
So,
can you explain to everyone, because I don't know what
is
TX
Torex.
Flex.
So you've got regular stiff X, TX.
I think that's what I've got.
And then, so what must be understood is that the difference between an X and a TX. Okay, at Matt's speed, he's really, really exaggerated in terms of his strength from the load. So at his speed, then you would stiffer because it's just going to feel loose. The shaft's going to feel all over the place. So where he's loading it so far beyond where most players do, that's where that has a relevance. But realistically, it's weight and it's the shaft profile. Tipping's a tiny amount. Tipping does a very, very small amount. You're trying to really fine tune a very small amount of spin and again, a feel thing. But TX, forgive me, it's a trouser department thing. X, TX. I'm at 108, 110 miles. I use just a bog standard stiff. And it works. Martin Borgmeier, who's the world long drive champ, used a soft, regular, verging on ladies flex shaft in his gamer and his long drive. So please don't worry about flex. The feel bit, the flex is more relevant to feel than it is to where the ball goes. Right. So if you're someone who, like Matt does, where he builds his speed and loads the shaft a lot, he doesn't want to feel that shaft moving. That's when you go to the stiffer flexes, not for ball flight.
One of our most popular videos on our channel is shaft flex myth. I think we've had, I don't know how many thousand views on that now. Please go and watch it, because this consistency of people worrying about flex, we need to move on from that, don't we?
Well, it's understandable, because it's what's been
pushed
over the last
years,
God knows how many years. There's a letter on the shaft that gives a talking point.
Absolutely.
But the difference between an S and an X, or an R and an S, is 3% the bend of the shaft, 3 to 5%. That's all it is.
The old days of that feels a bit.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Love that. So we've got.
But it's a feel thing ultimately, and
question.
It's trust in it.
Question on the gram.
Question on the gram.
So please look at this camera here. Stuart Brister, hi gents, late joiner. What thoughts on wedge shaft / head weight versus irons to help a struggling wedge player?
So there are two things. So about 80% of the time, 75% of the time, we'd often go a little bit heavier in the wedge shafts, because where you're not looking for, it's not a full swing club, you're not looking for the club to accelerate and move with you. You're using the weight to find strike, using the weight to drop you down to the ball a little bit more. So more often than not, one would go a little bit heavier, say 10 grams or so. However, if you're a player that is more body turn and doesn't pull on the handle, isn't an arms-based player, then going heavier will just make you fat it. So there are some players that maintaining shaft across the board and keeping the shaft constant from irons into wedges works really well. More often than not, you go a little bit heavier, but that's really and again, swing weight, head weight across the board is important to make sure that it's harder. Stuart, I know he's relatively tall, and so swing weight in wedge heads are very heavy, so that can be hard to manage.
I'm going to have to bring the mouse over here.
But Stuart's a man of detail, so he'll appreciate that.
Listen, we're all about detail here at Precision Golf. Peter Cantor, great to see you, Peter. Great as always, of course. When I tested my wedges with Simon last week, he put water in the way. This looks too easy.
There's a bit of water there.
Oh, right. Oh, I see. Water in the way.
Peter's upset that I gave him a distance inappropriate to the wedge he was testing, and the 2 shots he hit beautifully came up short, which is a fair comment. And noted. I will be better in the future.
Niels Axelson, your thoughts about using the same shafts from the irons through the wedges? I would think it gives a more consistent, uniform feel through the set, and thereby more consistent performance. We sort of touched on that.
Yeah, it goes back to the same part there. So I match my iron shafts into my 50 degree, my gap wedge, which is more of it's more a shorter version of the pitch wedge. It's more of a full swing club. But if I don't go heavier into the wedges, because wedge technique's never been my strength. A wet upslope in winter means a fat, basically. But I need a bit more weight as I go into the shorter shots. Whereas at this weight, better for a fuller swing where I'm accelerating and swinging through, it's more just like a shorter version of a pitch wedge. When I go to the finesse ones, if I don't play a little bit more weight, then I can overwork it a bit. So I want the weight and momentum of the club to take me into the bottom of the ball. So that's where there are going to be some players that consistency of shaft through works, but say the majority, 75%, a bit heavier helps control the club at the slower pace.
Our favourite YouTube name, Norwegian Warhound. I've heard it said, sorry, it's never going to get old, that for me.
Oh.
I've heard it said to go heavier and softer in a wedge shaft. I'm in a Modus 105 regular in my irons. What should I consider in my wedges? We've just covered that really.
Yeah. I mean, the softer bit, again, it's a feel thing. You're not loading the shaft, so that's softer bit. Ultimately, if you're in a Modus 105, you could try the Modus 120 in a regular, or you've got the, actually the 105 wedge shaft, not the iron set, but the wedge version of it, is more like 109, 110 grams. So that could work. Or if it's slightly heavy, you want to keep the feel, then 120 regular might work quite well, because that's about 114 grams.
I love Turtle 315. Evening, Eric and Ernie. Picking up on Stuart's comments on recommendations. Oh no! Listen, we're going to have to walk off tonight, finishing like this. Stuart's comments, recommendations on specialised short game area in the southeast. Packesham used to have a short game area. They had a short game area. Horn Park in Godstone has a great short game area, pitching up to 60 odd yards.
It's not necessarily, if you're north of London, then Brocket Hall, amazing short game area there.
Chart Hills as well, they had a great short game area. You could be a member there for a nominal fee. Those would be my 3 recommendations in the south.
Ones that are easier to get to.
Yeah. Horn Park is definitely a biggie, and so too is Packesham in Leatherhead. They're 2 good places. Paul Clanner, that's a new name. Welcome along, Paul. Did we know Paul?
Saw him earlier in the text.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks for that.
Glad you noticed.
Quick follow-up. The bounce value 10 to 12 degrees. Explain the reason for that.
So it's literally, they're not literal angles of bounce, but bounce is the angle between the leading edge and then the peak element of the wedge. So my 56 degree has got more bounce because there's a steeper angle from there to there, peaks up more than my 50. So if you tend to get a bit steeper, if you tend to play softer conditions, then more bounce will protect the leading edge from digging into the turf. If you're shallower and tend to nip it off the top a bit more and tend to not get any shaft lean, then you don't need as much bounce. If you've got firm sand, firm turf, soft sand, those are all the variables. So it's not literal in terms of the number. It's the class as effective bounce. If they actually, so the D grind for Titleist says 12 degrees. It has a lot more than 12 degrees on it, but it's based on effective bounce because of the ground back edge. But higher number, more bounce, lower number, less bounce.
Yeah, and don't get caught up in bounce either. By
No,
the way.
yeah.
That's another story. Dave Hurley, my driver head speed is 113, 115. Well, both Simon and I dislike you already, Dave.
Yeah,
just
I can't
joking.
achieve that.
My pitching wedge, 45 degrees, carries 130, 134. How many wedges should I have? As I have a pitching wedge, 50, 54, 58. It's perfect to me by the sounds of that.
Yeah, and I think it also depends where your strengths and weaknesses are. So for me, relative weakness, bottom end of the bag, give myself more clubs. Certainly where your speed is, and most of the courses we're going to be playing as non-tournament professional players, having at your kind of driver speed, you're going to be hitting shots from under 150 yards and in, probably under 100 yards and in quite a lot. So as you have the extra club down there, give yourself the armoury there for sure.
Yeah, Andy Corso, it says part of the problem with Irish shaft flex is that the vast majority of players play extra stiff or TX and is there seen as aspirational by amateurs. Now, I think it's a good point there, but it's like going into the gym. There's someone going into the gym every day of the week and you go in there once a week and you're swinging your 15 kilogram kettlebell and the guy standing next to you...
16, I'll have you know.
Are you sure, Ben? Charles, like that?
Yeah.
The guy standing next to him that's in there every day is swinging a 40 kilogram kettlebell. The reason why he's swinging 40 kilograms is because he's in there every single day and he's got some strength. That's the reason why shaft flex is irrelevant. It's more about the weight, and a tour player that's strong and swinging hard can swing something heavier and control it and move appropriate at that speed.
And they play stiffer because they're used to that feeling. Historically, all the players on tour have gone through 10, 15, 20 years of playing, but have got used to the feeling of a firmer, stiffer golf shaft. So that's a comfort blanket thing as well. I think you're looking at the players that care most about distance. Ironically, you'd think with the stronger swings would play the stiffer shafts. They're not. They're playing way softer than any of the tour players would play. Yeah. So it's a feeling and a trust bit. The tour players do not want to feel that head twisted impact. And someone like Rory, the last thing he wants to feel is something that feels like it's going left on him. A stiffer shaft will feel anti-left, and that's why they have always oriented to the stiffer shaft.
But it feels anti-left because it's heavier loads. Swings later.
No, it's just because you sense a little bit less giving it. You get a little bit of amplification of bend and twisting and shaft droop on a softer shaft. But and so between a stiff and an extra, if a stiff and a TX flex, you're looking at 6 or 7% of the bending of the shaft. It's not going to turn a straight shot into a hook or a slice. No. It's what you think it's going to do, and whether the player commits to swing and carries on because they trust it, or they back off it because it feels wrong. Sure. So.
Norwegian Warhound.
Iowa, state in the US.
Okay.
I'd look at that twice as well.
Is sloppy.
Especially with the following statement.
Is sloppy in the spring and baked out in the summer. That's like a pie my mum used to make. What kind of grinds would be considered versatile? Warhound is on vacation and hoping to get in a few rounds. Are you on vacation with the wife, and is she going to let you play? Or are you going to have to sneak out when she's in bed? Let's know.
I mean, if you get that difference in conditions, then the highest lofted wedge you could probably do with having one low bounce and one high bounce. It's an extravagant way of doing it, but if conditions vary that much, then if you're playing a pitch wedge, let's say sand lob or gap sand wedge, the sand wedge and the gap wedge don't generally need to change because they're the ones playing the least delicate shots. The lob wedge is the highest loft is the one where what you don't want to be having to do is compromise strike to try and get some bounce on the club or to get the leading edge into the ground, because either way you're having to either massively de-loft to get the leading edge down or add loads of loft to get some bounce on it. So you're then you're having to make big differences to the flight and the angle of attack, the shaft lean, so therefore distance and flight control things to get some strike on it. So if your conditions vary that much, then yeah, maybe a high bounce and a low bounce lob wedge. Yeah. Otherwise, if you try and make one work for both, you're having to compromise on both, rather than making at least get it right for one of them.
Specialise,
So,
Let's have a little 60-yarder, because I think if there's a shot that nobody likes,
just for
It's-
Peter, I'm going to put it over water.
make sure you do that. Make sure you do that.
Have you got the mouse?
Oh
There it
yeah,
is.
it's just on the top there. So we're going to do 60 yards, because I think this is a shot that's awkward. So many people, I believe, will whip out their lob wedge and start swinging like a lunatic at a 60-yarder. The better player will tend to have lesser loft and try to push a shot in. I think this is quite a nice shot to play.
I'm going to get it to a 60-yard shot if this kills me.
Yeah,
65.
65, perfect. Yeah,
60.
60.
Better.
And I think
Nasty
to-
piece of water short.
to the point that we talked about, where Dave Hurley was talking about the clock face system, the 9 o'clock backswing is kind of what you have to feel for a 60-yarder if you're still feeling acceleration. I think so often when you see people from 60 yards, you sort of see this sort of long backswing DXL, lay the sod over it, and all of a sudden, before you know it, you only have to
That one didn't even make the water.
you only have to see a few of those, and before you know it, you're sort of throwing your knees at it and flicking one over your left shoulder. So the 60-yarder is an awkward shot. What club do you tend to go to, and how do you play it when you're playing?
I'll go to my 60. A quick answer to Andy Corso: raw finish, more spin, complete myth. Because actually they changed the width of the grooves to account for the fact that it hasn't got a layer of chrome. So complete myth, it just takes out glare.
Right.
And it feels softer because you haven't got a layer of chrome on it.
I mean,
So,
honestly, every week I learn something off this fella. I mean, he wears some, questionable trousers, but he's got lots of knowledge. Go on.
like to keep you on your toes. I'll always go. I think one thing that you always see from the tour pros, the best wedge players, they're always committed to these shots. There's actually a reasonable bit of acceleration going on, and they're not hitting it hard, but they're swinging through the ball rather than kind of stalling at it and steering it. So for me, from a 60-yard shot, my 60-degree wedge, and pretty much is, if you can get the swing back to there, then you're making a turn. Big muscles, for me, has always worked better the moment the hands get involved. The phrase was the electricity of the hands kicks in.
Yes.
But I just like to feel like it's a full turn through, or full turn. It's about a 9 o'clock swing, turn through and keep. You're going to hate me, so keeping the face fairly quiet. Because I don't want to be. I've always rolled the face a little bit. So.
Look, we're going to have 3 shots here, and we're going to see closest to the pin. 3 shots.
Right. It's like that, is it?
Pin. Yeah, we're going all competitive. Now, if you've seen the oh, look at that!
A bit of
That's
chew.
Naughty. Now, am I right? There was James and yourself out on holiday in Florida. Sorry, at the trade show. Sorry, it was a trade show, wasn't it? Yeah, you were.
If it was
you were
holiday, we
working-
wouldn't have been
it's
staying where
always
we
a work
did.
trip.
working at the trade show.
Stu, it's always a work trip.
Yes. I assume Kate's listening, isn't she? So, and you had a little chipping comp around the green.
Oh
with-
yeah. I nearly took someone out.
Yeah,
Yeah. If you haven't seen the video,
it's brilliant. It's brilliant.
It was quite. It wasn't as laser-like as it looked, but
But you having a chipping comp with the what was the lady's name?
Sarah Bennett, who was the
That's it.
captain of the PGA.
That's it.
recently,
And there was a
who
guy
has a
that
very good short game.
yeah, and the guy walked out in front of you, didn't he? And then you were about to screen, and
It was
then
a
he
good one.
took you
Yeah. It
out.
would have been. Well, I think it was some eye height.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
I used to hate having bunker shots around the green. At
Bunkers are
tournaments.
okay.
Well,
Bunkers are fine. Yeah, it's just kind of one of those. Right. Are you just trying to distract them back to
yes,
a good first
yes,
one? haven't you?
exactly. But I'm glad you picked up on it.
Not quite as close.
Well, how close was the first one?
About 2 foot.
Was it? Right.
Please say, Matt.
Got
What
one-
was that?
one-
That was-
one more. You've
You
got-
can actually, if you go into that, you can see how close that one was. If you go and hit the tiles, it should give you
proximity.
Yeah. I think
12 feet.
12 foot. So it says 6 foot the other one because it was definitely half that.
Okay,
We'll see what this
we'll
one
take
does.
spin axis away and put that one up. Great, 12 feet. We'll give you 10 feet.
Have a bit of that.
Oh, wonderful! Really happy for you.
Yeah.
Really, really happy for you. Now, here's my take on. That's 3 feet. You've hit that too.
Yeah.
Now, here's my.
It doesn't matter if your techniques. If you win, that's all that counts.
That's all
isn't
that
it?
counts. Now, see, I think with 60-yard pitch shots, like I was saying earlier, you get really long, and then all of a sudden the club head starts to overtake, and then you get the other end of the spectrum where the handle is really trying to accelerate. For me, I'm always trying to make transition feel as soft as possible, because it's when you're moving the head weight back in the opposite direction. I think the softer you can make transition when you're playing these 60-yarders, the more touch and feel you have. I, however, have very limited touch on 60-yard pitch shots. I mean, I can't remember the last time I hit a 60-yard pitch shot.
Making excuses already.
So you hit lob wedge, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've got 54 here.
Would that be what you normally hit?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I hate hitting lob wedge other than around the green.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, yeah, I'm just not a massive fan looking down at lots of loft when I'm in the middle of the fairway.
So for me, it allows me to feel like I've always been better on fuller swings. So it allows me to feel like I can be a little more positive with it. But that's why I play a 60, and a lot of people don't like a 60, they play a 58.
Right. I feel like with that waterfront Cantor's fault, I haven't got much room to play with.
Yeah. Never mind, eh?
Yeah, it's average. But it's interesting, isn't it? I think the 60-yarder is a tricky shot to play because, again, in the UK, where do you really get an opportunity to practice that shot? If you if you go down the range and you're practicing off a mat, that doesn't simulate grass.
And that as a surface is, even this one's much more forgiving.
Yeah, like you just physically look down on a ball on a range, hitting shots off of it. It just feels different to a mat, doesn't it? From a practice perspective, you all of a sudden start digging at it a little bit more, and then you lay the sod over a couple, then you start thinking, and all of a sudden you're worrying more about making good contact than you are about dealing with your distance.
I think that's where, over here, because of the grass being fine and the ball sits down a little bit more, in the States, whenever I've played in the States, I can spin my short shots so much more because it's a thicker leaf, so the ball actually grips a little bit more on the greens. Whereas here we get more run out. So it's very rare. There are certain times of year you can get that spinny chip or spinny wedge shot. But actually, unless you've got the completely fresh grooves that the tour pros have got, because they change them every 4 weeks, a great lie, and the sort of firmer, tighter surfaces that they can kind of nip them off. It's actually very hard to get those spinny short wedge shots. As you say, if it's sat down, the last thing you want to do is just sort of clip it off. You want to go out and get ball first.
Yeah.
And then when it gets wet, then you can't squeeze the ball against the turf. There's nothing to resist. Yeah, so, and there are no practice facilities.
Yeah, it gets nasty.
Other than that, right.
Good luck. Kevin Taylor, should I say, is there an aftermarket version of the Hazardous Red RDX driver shaft? If not, what is similar that you would recommend?
So the answer is no. No, they kept the aftermarket to the green and the blue. Even the black, there's no aftermarket. So the RDX series, that's the red because it's a softer tip. Doesn't need such a high grade material. They haven't gone there yet. They might well soon. In terms of keeping a kind of a mid spin. The RDX isn't that counterbalanced, so if you wanted something with a little bit of feel, let me just think through the line. Let me see. I mean, Ventus Red, but that's going to feel a little bit firmer. Actually, the VA Composites, the Villain series, that's similar. That's got a little bit more response through the tip of the shaft. Yeah, that's similar kind of torque. Probably swings slightly lighter, but that's a really similar one. Not that you're going to find those very many places. Another one, let me see, what's one that you're likely to see? So I'm just kind of glance at the wall here just to think, one that you're likely to see place. Potentially with Graphite Design, the IZ or the VR. VR's probably similar series. Yeah, the VR Graphite Design would be a pretty similar one to that.
Stu says, could you explain why a lower T-peg with a driver causes a fade when a lower T would generally mean hitting down on the ball, which is more of an in to out swing path? Interesting.
I think both Stuart and I would disagree with you about a low T shooting it, creating an in to out path. Most people I see who have a low T with a driver, it's because they're
So what Stu is referencing is that if you do hit more down, it means that you're hitting it earlier in the circle.
Yep.
And so therefore if you kept all things equal, it would create more of an inside out path. But normally what Simon's referencing is that as soon as you see someone fading the golf ball, they'll approach it more from the outside. What most fitters see is that the problem is that people hit down, that opens the face, that inspires the outside in path because of the open face. What you're referencing to is a different means that if you hit down more, you do approach more from the inside if you kept all things equal, but that would mean that you would start it right and it would then fade. I did a video on attack angle and T-peg height. T-peg height does not, or it is not the way to change your angle of attack. You need to change the way your levers work. How your lever unloads through strike will ultimately give you the power to either hit up, hit down, or hit neutral, which is what I just demonstrated on the mat, that I can feel when the lever swings. When the lever swings, it will take the attack angle away and point the loft more left. When I hit more down, it will make the lever stay loaded, point the face more right. You're much better off understanding what the direction of change is to make that happen in your game, rather than teeing it down, because it will absolutely make you hit more down. Do that a few times, you won't be swinging from the inside, you will be swinging from the outside.
I mean, some of it is also the gearing. If you're hitting low on the face, then what happens is that the ball it creates backspin, and that, because of a low strike, as it strikes the head kicks, so the ball rolls up the face, creates backspin, and that can also create a slight fade bias to it, or it'll hold a hook spin a little bit, but yeah.
I love Turtle 315. Stuart, thoughts on Dan Greaves' release of wedge play? There's a few answers for that, but I'm not going to go into it here because we're not really about the coaching side of things necessarily in these sessions. But my being diplomatic, the minute someone says there's 3 ways to release a wedge, I tune out, because that's making it way too complicated. There is enough out there with just talking about bounce that causes so many issues, to then start bringing to the forefront of a golfer's mind that they've got 3 ways to release this wedge. You're just asking for troubles. So for me,
very much an elite level.
No, he's teaching it to different.
Or rather, would you see that as more just for elite level? Or
I think when you're understanding what you're trying to gather out of a shot, are you trying to gather flight? Are you trying to gather spin? What does the shot require? When you work back from that, and then you understand how you need to deliver a club to make that ball perform, that's a better way of going, rather than I've got 3 ways to release the wedge. So that's how I would see it. And that may be what Dan Greaves is talking about, but I'm not familiar. But when I get very worried when someone says there's 3 ways to release a wedge, because I know the problems that coaches have had or given to people about using the bounce. I've had clients come to me that could not make a divot. They're trying to use the bounce so much, and I just said to them, swing and take a divot out of the ground, and they couldn't make a divot. All they could do was hit it with the very back edge, because they had that much unload and they were using the bounce that heavily. So I really get worried when 3 releases. That kind of worries me. But maybe I'll take a look at it. Yeah. I think the Titleist irons. need to be hit and looked at.
So
Not talked about though.
Well, we
just
can't talk
looked
about
at.
the tech involved, but we can talk about them and what they do. So we're going to do, but I'll take a couple of them, do a comparison with the previous models. So we've got the T100S that's been in play the last couple of years, and the T150, which is a progression on. So further away or closer. Yeah, if I keep moving it. So yeah, very slight progression on. There are some differences, and essentially what Titleist has done, have taken the previous model and developed it. It's not a massive change. The 350 is more of a change from the 300, but the 150 from the T100S is a progression on what they've done before. So what I'm going to do is do this, and then with the T200, once we switch over that, I'll bring that up. We'll do the same kind of comparison. I'm just going to change the distance we're heading to, because make it a bit more relevant. I'm just going to see, is there a better target to hit to? Let's go. Is that a better view?
There we go. Lovely.
So, got the same loft. We're going to hit a couple with the 100S, and then switch it over, and just sort of describe what the differences are. They've certainly, I think, to be fair to Titleist, they've definitely made a progress with it. I think it's definitely what we'd say is a better head. It's definitely a more stable head. I think one of the things with the 100S, depending on how good the audio is, whether you can hear it, is it's relatively clicky, relatively. And when you're taking it from the T100 into the T100S, I haven't gone long enough on the whole.
What a shame.
But
196, it's got 192 carry. What car is that? Is that a 6-iron?
6-iron, yeah, that was
strong.
That was absolutely nuked. So it's spin 4,900, a smash factor 143. I mean, I'm not going to hit that any better.
Yeah, that was tidy.
But yeah, it's been a very strong performer, and I think having that little bit of ball speed across the face versus the T100, there's a bit of progression there. One of the things with it, actually, I'll take a look. We can see I'll hold it up here, don't know which camera you want me to use, but is the sole width on the 150. It's a little bit wider. What they've done, they've deepened the weight of it. Let's see if I can see from here. You can get a little bit of look on toe end on as well. You see how much more club head there is. So I'll show it to the other camera as well. The 150 to the 100S. So there's definitely, they've moved more away from the face, a little bit more stability off center, and I think that's one of the elements where maybe the 100S didn't quite progress enough, and then there's quite a big jump to the T200. So
they do it very well, don't they, Titleist? Such a classic, the satin look, bit of chrome in there. It's a wonderful. They're all wonderful looking. Yeah,
it's a very neat club head. I mean, it's still, to kind of show the kind of top line. The top line's still very clean. So they've got a little bit of chamfering on that top edge. A little bit closer. A little bit of chamfering on that top line to make it look a little bit thinner. Let's see if I can get a view that matching it there. So it looks a little bit thinner than it actually is. So the classic Titleist sort of player's iron look. They've maintained that. So you've got a bit more club head without actually looking like it, to look down on there. Certainly, internally there are a few bits you can't talk about, but for another 9 days, 10 days. But one of the things in particular, it's a little less, that was a little low on the face, it's a little less clicky, but what you do get is that the club head feels very, very stable at impact. I've pulled that a little bit. If I can strike one like the previous one, I mean, that one wasn't hit that well. It's the same smash factor as the nuked one out, the 100S. So let me give it one more. Yeah, so that feeling of the club head kind of staying with the contact more rather than feeling all the vibrations on it. So that one was a pretty neutral hit. Maybe a little bit more flight. The 100, 150, I think it's probably the stability on it. Actually, looking at ball speed, spin's pretty neutral, maybe slightly higher launch, but absolutely a more forgiving feel. And I think that little bit of an extra progression from the 100s is going to maybe draw a few more people into that. Certainly as a, I guess, would you blend it? You might blend into that, into the longer irons a little bit more.
Simon, I'm going to have to dip out because I've got a chap that I need to go and help.
No.
Enjoy the rest of the insights for the new Titleist irons.
You just don't want to get beaten again in the challenge.
No, I absolutely don't. I've been beaten up already, even with the pitching and the trousers.
And the trousers, definitely. Definitely. Well, you beat me in the polo shirt, Brighton, this morning.
Well, listen, enjoy the rest of the show with Simon, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Have fun.
Take care.
So then the other one I'm going to do a quick hit with as well is the 200. So they're launching the T100, 150, 200 and 350. And there have been pictures out online for the last week or so. So T200 that has been around for the last couple of years, and new T200. So same kind of principles in terms of that material in the back, trying to take weight out the back. Very, very similar in terms of the sole width. So less progression in that respect than we got on the 150. But I'm going to, because these heads are a little bit stronger, I'm going to just extend the distance out a little bit more here because I know this one goes further. So again, I'll hit the previous, or the kind of the one that's been out a couple of years first. So big criticism of this head was the sound off of it. There is that kind of harsh, clicky note, which is down to that material in the back, that thinner plastic in the back. So performance was always good with it, but it didn't really, he says sticking it to about 2 foot, didn't really feel like a Titleist head. So it's got that kind of harshness. So I hit another one that might come out a little bit more. It's got a real kind of hard note. There was quite a big differential off the 100, 100S. So what we'll see on here, again, kind of smash factor on the first one was about 141, that one 140, carry 190. If I switch over to the new T200, we'll see what difference we get. Neil's added tungsten in the bottom of the new Titleist. Currently, I couldn't possibly say anything. Actually, there is a global embargo that restricts me from saying anything about the tech. There will be some internal changes, or are some internal changes, but those you'll have to wait for another time, sadly. So we'll switch over to the new one. Again, very similar, it's a very clean line through it. I think that's one of the things Titleist has always done well, that line, the hosel into the leading edge and into what we call the kind of crutch of the head, which is right in the neck here, is a very, very neat frame shape. So, haven't hit that particularly well. There's still a little bit of hardness to it because it's still got that lighter material in the back of the head. But for one that I didn't particularly catch, we're still 191 carry. Let me do one more. That was probably down to a bit of a horrible strike. Didn't get the club speed. If I see if I can hit this cleanly. So there's a little bit more of a kind of a sound of snap off the face rather than the harsh, clunky sound. There's a bit more speed off of that. And what we're likely to see is smash factors up. So there is more ball speed, carry 195, picked up a couple of, few yards, but the efficiency is higher. And that I think is something that's going to be noticeable, that progression of ball speed through the models. I think we're likely to see a little bit more. So this is the kind of club head where if you're wanting a fairly neat head shape, but some performance out of it, similarly with the 350 as well, you're going to see some ball speed progression. But hopefully, still 4.7 on spin. There's still a reason we had a spin on it, and I think that's something that in our kind of initial hits with them, that's something that we're seeing, is that they're not a low spin, too low spinner bomber. there is some retention on spin there. So that's certainly something you'll be able to start fitting properly with these next week. So the 3rd is the official date that's doable from. And I think a really interesting new set of heads. I think they've done a good job. Obviously, when we can talk about the tech, we will do. But we'll certainly update you as soon as we can with that. But definitely heads where the release date will be back end of August, and I think they're going to do well with those. So some nice changes throughout the range. Norwegian Warhound MP20 AMCs could be in trouble. I mean, the 20s were a nice head, the MMCs were nice, but there's no real tech in them. There's no ball speed progression. I think that's where the 223s this year have really done well for them. There's a little bit of ball speed progression from the tech in the face. So I think certainly over a club of that era, you can definitely get performance as you go through the set, particularly into the top end. So certainly worth a look. But I think, if I'm correct, we are pretty much, if not out of time, through time. So as with everyone, I would say Stuart's already had to head off, which should have told me we're already through time. But thank you again for watching. Hope you've enjoyed the coverage today. I hope you enjoyed what we had to talk about. And say anything you want us to go over or cover, and say keep firing the questions in. We'll hit and test and cover anything that we're legally allowed to. Great being able to follow up from major championships, although that's now done for another 9 months till Augusta. So still a few things like Ryder Cup to look forward to. So looking forward to that. And we have that course on the sim. So all kinds of challenges can come forth when we come out to Ryder Cup time. But thank you all again for watching. I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. If you haven't already, make any comments, hit the like button, subscribe, and we'll do our best to bring you the content that you really want to see moving forward. So thanks again for watching. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Monday.